Hi, good morning, everyone. Uh, Glad to have you joining us and for another partner webinar. Appreciate you working with us during taking a month off there in July recently. Or was that June? The summer has gone by so fast with that. For those of you who do not know me or don't recall, my name is Guy Gaster. I serve as the director of the North Carolina Film Office and also help host these monthly partner webinars. And very excited about this month's webinar. I will be giving a very quick Visit and See quarterly update, and then we've got an Xpress session here that will be talking about the evolution of algorithmic media. That is a mouthful, but we have Maggie Carpenter, who's a communications specialist, and Rebecca Henderson, Associate Director of Content Intelligence. Rebecca, I need you to help me come up with a job title similar to that. But both with our agency of record, Lou Quire, who have some fascinating insight and some applicable measures you can do or ways to look at your own programs that they're going to share as we continue on. As a reminder, we are recording this webinar. It will be made available on the Visit NC Tourism Industry YouTube page, which you can easily access from the partners section of visitnc.com. And feel free to use the chat feature as well as the Q&A feature. We will take questions, most likely holding them till the end of this presentation, but you can drop them in at any time. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of our quarterly update for Visit NC. Starting out with research and kind of where we stand right now. The year-to-date visitor economy index shows that the health of the tourism economy in North Carolina remains positive, and that positivity is since November of 2025. As a reminder, with this index, and we've showed this slide a couple of times, anything above zero, which is the line going across somewhat in the middle, means that the performance is ahead of the previous year. And anything below, of course, would mean that we are below, below the previous year. So again, we are still ahead through June, even though the line is starting to go down, if you will. You can see that is typical what happens, and we saw this last year as we come out of this, leading into summer, and then it typically spikes back up, and then there's a little bit of drop again. But again, we are positive so far. Now, where are we seeing visitors coming from through June? The majority of our visitors from our out of state are from our out of state primary markets. Sorry, having a hard time speaking. Atlanta, once again, is the top out of state market through the first quarter, followed by the Greenville, Spartanburg area, DC, and Columbia, South Carolina. Um, but I do want to continue. It's a trend that we are seeing our top value markets. So, who is spending the most money? It remains the DC area and those from New York and the New York area. So that is a trend that we're now noticing. Even though South Carolina, uh, three three metro areas there are in our top 10 of out of state origin, you will notice that they are some of the lowest percentage of visitor spending. Um, so again, interesting numbers, but it does continue to hold up. Also, for in-state markets, the Triangle area, which includes Fayetteville in this, has the largest percentage of visitor spend, as well as the largest percentage of visitors. Um, as far as the lodging data goes, things are pretty flat all around statewide. Revenues are up, but that's actually more of a function of rates than demand. The average stay values for rentals are not shown here, is up 5% from last year, but we are seeing that the length of stay is down 2%. So it does appear that visitors still want to travel. However, it's coming at the expense of length of stay. And then vacation rentals, again, this is a look that we get. We don't have this for hotel data, but we do have it for vacation rentals, and it does remain positive. Yes, again, I know a chart can look a little misleading and it looks like a nosedive, but this is actually a positive as we are up roughly 10% more from this same period last year. And this is what is booked in advance as of now. And we have also been talking about the fact that people are booking closer to when they are traveling. So this number again is positive despite it looking and being on a downward trend. So nationwide, what is some information on the travel forecast? You can see the bullets here. Low but positive spending growth projections and resilient domestic demand. Again, people are wanting to travel and seem to be willing to travel. They just might not be traveling as long as they would have previously. Travel continues to be a priority. There are those shorter durations, as I mentioned. Our international recovery it is going to probably be uneven across markets. And look no further than the recent World Cup for that. There was a slow to book on hotels, but certainly some of those cities and municipalities that hosted events um, and actual games, we're seeing an uptick, whereas some other parts of the country likely are not. So that is a little bit of the good and bad with international markets. And business travel growth is expected to be low in the short term, but it is looking like it will probably be on the rise in 27 and beyond. All right. So, from the marketing standpoint, if you did not hear, there was an additional 13 million in non-recurring funding that was part of the budget that recently passed and has been signed by the governor. So, is in effect. This is wonderful news. However, you also know as we do our planning, we're now into promoting travel for the fall and had to make those buying decisions and advertising decisions much more in advance. So with the budget infusion, the paid media budget is increasing by 350%. And what it essentially is making our marketing team do is ask, whereas last year we were asking what markets do we cut because of lack of funding, this year it's where do we lean? Where do we go into? So again, I do want to emphasize it's not something that can be fully turned on immediately due to some purchases we've already made. But we are looking at how we can allocate the winter, spring, and summer advertising flights still upcoming in this fiscal year to layer in those new markets. Where do we lean into, as I just mentioned? What new audience opportunities and new media tactics are there? And then also, how can we allocate additional funding to our current fall spend to kind of plus up that existing plan and increasing the weighting and frequencies of that advertising? It is important to note that spending percentages in both current and new markets will not be equal on that. And that's probably true in your own areas. I don't think that surprises anyone, but just want to add that in. There are a couple of other areas of focus with the incremental budget. We do have other priorities that we'll be addressing outside of the paid media plan, and those will have positive impacts on our partner programs, partnerships, our creative production, and even the marketing technology. And one of the areas, again, you can see the bullets, but sponsored content will be something that was previously cut when when it did not look like we would have this additional funding. Now that it's there, that is something that is being added back into the marketing plan. All right. So speaking of that, the updated creative, fall creative. During the time last fiscal year, there was a look into, hey, what's working, what's resonating well with our audience. And what came out of this is a continuation of the For Real campaign. The ads that worked well are those that are competitive ads, but in a friendly format. You all are familiar with this. This is also where some of the ads, if you've seen them, the Bless Your Hearts or Bless Their Hearts, came in. We will continue to juxtapose North Carolina vacations and experience with other vacation experiences. And an example of that, and part of the updated creative, is this ad titled Microwave, and it's a 15-second. Let's see what we got here. Oh, no. Wow. Apologies. That did a dramatic skip. 1 second here. All right. So our creative, let's run this spot.
In another state, a family's enjoying historically accurate recipes straight from the microwave. Beep! It's ready. For real. Visit North Carolina.
All right. So again, you will start. So these ads will start running in those markets, and have been, and you will continue to play into that fun, competitive side as part of the ongoing marketing campaign. All right, with public relations, results year to date through June, 93 PR placements. We're up in total unique reach. And one of the great things that we're loving to see, we're up 52% in the individual counties covered, which would mean that they were featured or highlighted in articles that have been published, that North Carolina, that Visit NC had a part in pitching for, and that is up 52% from this time last year. Recent functions have included our summer camp reimagined fam. The PR team has also attended IPW down in Fort Lauderdale. We've had our Chicago media mission with several of our partners joining. We also had the event up in Albuquerque, PRSA's conference. And then Vita is also working with Destinations International and getting some additional certifications to help her in leading this sector of the industry. Coming up, we do have a brand, just finished actually, a Brand USA Aeromexico FAM. Vita will be in attendance at Esto. We've got another FAM coming up, as well as the SATW pre-FAM, and then attendance at the Michelin Guide ceremony in October. And then as far as the regional missions go, just mentioned we wrapped up the Chicago mission. We have Nashville coming up, as well as Charleston. And the in-state media mission is right around the corner, scheduled for October 26th here in the Research Triangle Park area. You all should have received emails, invitations for that in-state media mission. If you did not receive that and are interested in participating, please email media@visitnc.com and let us know that you are interested. Again, if you did not receive the invitation for participation in the in-state media mission, please reach out to media@visitnc.com. On the PIR side, really big launch. The redesigned Outdoor NC Trail Town Guide came out here in July. This in particular, this guide, the latest release, has transitioned from a digital flip book to an interactive landing page, making it much easier to explore North Carolina's trail town designations while allowing the resources to continue growing alongside the program. This, of course, has been created through the Outdoor NC initiative in partnership with allied destinations. And the guide serves as a go-to resource for planning outdoor adventures. Each destination includes links to featured trails, accessibility information, responsible recreation practices, and trip tips from local experts. And visitors can also explore an interactive map and learn the 7 outdoor NC leave no trace principles while joining the movement toward responsible travel. And it's a great site. If you haven't gotten a chance to explore, I definitely encourage you to take a few minutes and look around and see how these trail towns and their areas are being highlighted and the opportunities that are offered there. Speaking of Outdoor NC, the Partner Alliance for fiscal year 26-27 has kicked off. The program includes 53 partners, including 6 non-destination partners. Those range from nonprofits to governmental and educational organizations. This year's membership pathways have been tailored to specific organizational types, and they include expanded benefits and collaboration opportunities. So great things happening there. Again, if you're interested in learning more about Outdoor NC, please contact Meg here with Visit NC and happy to get more information your way. And yes, you can kind of see now as the homepage for Trail Towns. This is just giving a little bit of a scroll there on your viewing right as to how the page has evolved. All right. For sports NC, we talked a little bit about there were a positive on the budget with our marketing efforts. One thing that did happen was there was no new funding allocated for the esports incentive program. So please note that there are still funds remaining from previous years that can be used to award new competitions that take place. And for information on that, again, contact our Meg and or Amanda for more information. But we do want to note that unfortunately there was no new funded adding, so we wait to see how that will impact the program going forward long term. In the immediate, however, do want to restate there is still some funding available that is carried over from previous years. And then as far as upcoming events, the team will be at the Teams Conference in October with the Sports NC partners. And then they'll also be attending Sports ETA's Relationship Conference in December in Virginia Beach. And that's a chance to connect with events rights holders and industry partners. Retire NC update. In addition to the Retire NC guide being now available, new content has also been created by staff. And this includes several blog articles that will be available on retirenc.com and featured in the quarterly Retire NC e-newsletters. It was also included, some of that new content is available within the guide itself. Again, you can, if you're interested in copies of this, they are available through the Visit NC warehouse for ordering quantities similar to the travel guide. They're also available individually at our welcome centers and by request through the call center. And as we've made these transitions on many other areas, you can download the guide in its entirety at retirenc.com. And then on the international side, Visit NC's Amanda Baker and Vita Gilbert attended the U.S. Travel Association, IPW in Greater Fort Lauderdale. Several of our partners were also there joining us, including Visit Charlotte, Visit Greensboro, Visit Raleigh, and Explore Asheville, and took pre-scheduled appointments with some of the top tour operators and media from our state's top international markets. This year's conference saw over 5,000 attendees from 50 countries. We also recently had we partnered up with our business recruitment and business development and international trade teams to do an event in Germany that Governor Josh Stein, as well as Commerce Secretary Lee Lilly, were in attendance at. So this was both promoting tourism as well as business opportunities within the state. And then WIT recently was with Travel South for a mission to Australia and New Zealand. This is an expanding area that holds some great opportunities for North Carolina and the southern U.S. in terms of travel. So, and then finally, did mention that Aeromexico FAM that just took place. We do have a couple of upcoming events. There is some meetings and opportunities in Ireland surrounding the UNC TCU college football kickoff game that is coming up very quickly. We also have Brand USA's Week Europe, and then in November, an event in Finland, likely surrounding opportunity with the Carolina Hurricanes. And the team has recently completed a destination immersion. These continue to be very popular and very beneficial for us learning more about what's going on in your areas. We've just come back from Lexington and beautiful Davidson County. And then in Q4 of this year, we'll be visiting our friends there in Burke County. If you are interested in having in hosting a destination immersion for the Visit NC staff, as well as our call centers and welcome center staff or representatives, please contact Kathy Prickett. There are still some opportunities for calendar year 2027, and Kathy's also taking interest related to hosting these in 2028. All right, finally for film. As we go into the second half of the year, in-state spending has topped 230 million. This has been a very positive first half of the year. However, there are questions as to how the final year-end figures, and particularly the second half of the year, will play out as a result of some of the recent both legislative and policy changes related to the film program and the 25% rebate that the state offers. Currently in production, we've got season 2 of the ABC series R.J. Decker, and then a pilot for a potential new series that would be with Disney Plus titled Saltwater, which is a throwback and extension of the early 2000s movie Aquamarine. So if there's any mermaid fans out there, this will be right up your alley. So I mentioned some legislative changes that took place as part of the budget. These are listed here. In particular, there is a per project payout increase available. There was also an increase in the amount of pay to highly compensated individuals that could qualify for the program. And then there was a new subset of the grant created that would be for what is deemed micro budget projects. And these would be for projects who spend range from just under at 500,000 to just under 1.5 million. And then as part of the recent technical corrections bill, an additional 15 million in non-recurring funding was added to the program. Again, we are evaluating what these changes mean for the program and what any policy changes mean and how we will move forward. So if you have any questions related to that, feel free to reach out to me, and happy to share that information. But no, it is information that is constantly being updated and being determined. So sometimes the answer is we don't know, or we don't have an answer yet. Speaking of productions, projects have previously filmed in the state and or in the case of RJ Decker currently filming that you can catch since our last time we talked. The series Blue Ridge is available now on the INSP network. We also recently had the independent feature film Bad Counselors released in theaters, and are waiting to see when it will be available in terms of streaming or for download or on demand. RJ Decker is currently, you can, if you've missed out on season one, you can stream it right now on Hulu. And season two, which, as I mentioned, is currently in production in the state, starts back on ABC on September 15th with new episodes airing Tuesdays at 10 p.m. And just announced this week, Hallmark Channel has confirmed a Grand Biltmore Christmas, which filmed earlier this year and is a follow-up to a Biltmore Christmas. Will be on Hallmark Channel December 5th. I believe that's an 8 p.m. Start time. So I know all you Hallmark movie fans out there may want to make note of that. But again, a Grand Biltmore Christmas will be part of Hallmark Channel's Countdown to Christmas, coming out December 5th. That's our Visit NC update. I hope this information was beneficial to you. Now I want to bring in our friends from Luke Wire and fellow teammates Maggie Carpenter and Rebecca Henderson to talk more about how crazy the algorithm has come with social media, and how you can not get overwhelmed by it. Is that fair to say, ladies?
Very fair.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna turn it over to you guys.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Guy.
Well, thank y'all for hopping on to hear us talk about the evolution of algorithmic media today. As Guy mentioned, I'm Maggie, and I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Rebecca Henderson. And we're going to talk a little bit about what is algorithmic media, why does it matter, and what we as destinations can be doing to shift our approach with this broader landscape shift. Because the idea of the algorithm is something that is so consistently, like Guy said, potentially overwhelming. So we want to kind of help you decode what this means for you and what are some practical ways that you can be thinking about algorithmic media in your own content mixes. But the first thing that we want to talk about is how did we get here? So a quick timeline, think back to when social media really started, and it really started with chat rooms, early forums, your AOL messengers, your MySpaces. They were digital gathering places for like-minded people, people you might have known in real life, or people with similar interests. And in 2004, the landscape shifted a little bit from there. You started looking at things in terms of more of a feed, a reverse chronological update of everything that people are doing in their lives, pictures, their thoughts. It kind of just gave you a feed and a stream of consciousness for people that you were directly connected with. So it was highly dependent on followers, how many people were your friends on Facebook. That was a classic social network, and it was highly dependent on social behavior. So you had to say, yes, I know this person, or yes, I would love to network with this person. And you had to have that direct handshake or have that follower relationship. Now, you may be shocked to hear, but the idea of the algorithm is something that's been around since 2009. So where we really start to see algorithmic feeds emerge, algorithmic really just means ranked and organized. You start to see algorithmic feeds emerge. So it was a feed update on Facebook that happened in 2009, and it actually shifted everything to go from ranking things based on chronology and when things were posted to predicted engagement. So that's when you start to see your social media feed shifting to kind of accommodate for things that the platform thinks will be high quality content for you. Then, when you get into the later 2010s and you get into the 2020s, you start to see things like interest-based discovery, the idea of a For You page, a truly For You page that's shaped around your interests, things that you've established that you enjoy. So that's where you start to see your feed populate with, if you search up one recipe, you start to see recipe after recipe after recipe. Now we're in this age of what we like to call algorithmic media because it's a broader shift. So it's not just social platforms, algorithmic platform based platforms, because your Pinterests, your Spotify's, your Reddits, those are also all included in these. It's not just exclusive to short form video platforms. You start to see this shift to a more well-rounded idea of algorithmic media. And that's really what we want to talk about today because algorithmic now means that platforms, all of these algorithmic platforms are shaping the user experience based on context clues and all the signals that people are giving their specific algorithm for a more personalized experience. So, to sum this all up, the core principles that shape this user experience have fundamentally changed over the past 20 to 30 years. It started with networks and communities, and really that true idea of social media. And gradually, you're seeing social media and media in general become less social because you saw that shift to interest and engagement. And that was really a gateway to shifting algorithms to prioritize relevance, performance, and it's all driven by AI. So I've mentioned algorithmic media, I've mentioned what drives it, but what really is the definition? The definition is algorithmic media's digital content that's organized, prioritized, and distributed based on algorithms and signals versus chronological order or social behaviors. So what we're going to talk about next is, what does this idea of algorithmic media look like, and what's the current state of the landscape when it comes to all of these algorithmic media platforms? Like I mentioned a couple moments ago, reach used to rely on who follows you. So it used to be, you used to be really psyched when you saw an increase in followers. Followership doesn't mean what it used to because platforms aren't serving content based on how many followers a person has because following isn't trust anymore. You start like in the mid 2010s, you started to see accounts buying followers. And so this was a natural pushback against that phenomenon of created interest. Now it really relies on the value of content. And when we talk about the value of content, it's really that content that accomplishes the goal of speeding up the move between awareness and consideration. So, as travel destinations, we really focus a lot on that awareness with paid. But in this age of algorithmic media, your organic content's driving discovery as well, not just through high quality content being served on the For You page or via the Instagram algorithm. But we'll also, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about indexability and search because those things are playing more and more together in the same space. But in order to speed up that move from awareness and consideration in the marketing funnel, you have to understand, okay, what types of content are people considering? So we'll talk a little bit about how to spot that consideration and those signals that people are giving the algorithms to show you that that's deepened. And it's almost like consideration is feeding into awareness driving content now. So those interplay within these algorithmic spaces. So when we talk about discoverability factors, these are four key factors that Pinterest actually directly calls out as what drives discoverability via their visual search engine that the platform is. But when you really dig into it, these four factors can be said for driving discovery across most social platforms now. Relevance. How relevant is it to what people are looking for right now? So did we see an increase in views on Carolina Hurricanes content during the time of the Stanley Cup? Yeah, because it was highly relevant to how people were talking about the Canes and hockey in general. Uniqueness. Anecdotally and historically, we see that real and rare destinations, things that provide that unique experience, that unique travel recommendation, we see that content perform really well because no one's quite talking about it, or very few people are talking about it. So the more unique, the newer the take on a destination or an experience, the more likely it is to be served to people because it won't feel iterative. And the more information that you're feeding into these algorithms, the more they'll reward you. Content quality, this has to do with just how much detail and context can this be feeding both users and, spoiler alert, the bots, as well as, search behavior and all the things that we like to see. So the higher the quality of the content, now that social media platforms are indexed on Google, public facing platforms at least, having that high quality content and a high degree of user context increases discoverability as well. And then user engagement, which we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. Those are the signals that users are giving the algorithm to show that content is high quality. So all of these things play together. So, what do those signals look like? What does user engagement look like? I think to best explain this, we have to introduce the idea that engagement sits on a hierarchy now. You don't have just likes and comments being the top tier, what you judge performance by. They actually sit on almost like a three-tiered approach of what is most high impact in signaling to the algorithm. So, things that show long-term consideration or long-term value, like shares, which is both an amplifier and an extender of audiences, but also a signal that this is important enough for me to be an evangelist of. Saves. I always talk about saves as this person saw this and said, I need to keep this in my back pocket for later. That shows that long-term consideration, that long-term value that a user sees in that content. Link clicks, I will say this one is, it shows that even further consideration driver. So people notoriously don't want to go off platform, but when they click a link out and you see them going off site, that means that the content that you were giving them up front intrigued them enough to send them to learn more. And then you're seeing a lot of platforms also shift to watch time on videos because people also have notoriously short they have notoriously short attention spans now. So the longer that you can hook someone and give them more and more information and more reasons to visit, that tells the algorithm that your content is high quality as well and relevant. Um, Moderate impact, it's all in terms of effort. So comments, views, unique reactions, so your hearts and your celebrates and not quite your likes, those show a little bit more effort, which shows that that content was a little bit more higher value to a user. And likes and clicks still matter, but they don't suggest deeper engagement with the content as much as these other types of engagement.
Think that this, sorry to interrupt, Maggie. I think that this hierarchy really demonstrates why we foundationally think of it as algorithmic media over social media now. The highest impact activity really is more private. People are not really interacting with the platforms in that traditionally social way. They're still interacting with it as media, but the highest tiers really are more about those private exchanges, like sending videos to your friends, saving for trip planning later, things like that. So that's why we kind of foundationally encourage the restructuring in your mind away from the likes and clicks of the past of like what was truly social media about the visibility of comments, the visibility of friends, all of that towards algorithmic media, which, it's called the same product, but it foundationally is just such a different offering now.
It's a little more nuanced.
Yeah.
A little more nuanced there. So with all this being said, we have three kind of patterns and larger shifts that you can think about shifting your content approach to accommodate for this shift to algorithmic media. Um, The first one is community over commonality. If y'all were at a conference a couple years ago, you might have seen Rebecca and I doing a session called Weird Wins. This hasn't changed. This is actually truer than ever. So we talked a little bit about how uniqueness and relevance are true engagement drivers, and they are discoverability drivers. Because when you matter a lot to less people, they're highly engaged and more likely to convert to travelers. Um, so when we think about uniqueness and relevance, what are communities that could find a lot of value in your destination? Because that specificity is searchability. So we see this a lot with the First in Fright campaign. And I pulled out an example here of our haunted hotels and spooky stays. It may seem like a niche topic, but there are people who explicitly search out these types of stays. And by having a variety of different types of media to meet them where they are, whether it's written content on the website, it's long form podcast. We also uploaded these to YouTube too, so those transcripts get uploaded into the search ether. So it's highly searchable and indexable. And then also putting them out to social for another form of discoverability of the stories that we're telling of these places. And so this integrated approach, which, spoiler alert, Rebecca will be talking about that in a little bit, but this integrated approach really shows all the different ways that people can discover something that may seem niche, but it does matter to specific audiences. And the more they feel seen, the more likely they are to come spend time at your destination. And then niche identification, look inward. Find out, are there communities that my destination might be ripe for? A great place to look for this information is on Reddit. We found Reddit is actually a really high value platform for, understanding how people are talking about you and, what do travelers, looking through a traveler's eyes and seeing what value do they find in my destination? So we, of course, regularly look at r/North Carolina for obvious reasons. But some other communities that we've found people talking about North Carolina favorably in are the road trip subreddit. This morning I found a mention in the UFOs and extraterrestrials subreddit because First in Fright never ends. That's actually one of our most evergreen mentions. But thinking about those communities that you can slot yourself into is a really great way to continue driving that algorithmic prioritization within those niche communities. With this, lean into evergreen. Evergreen content, although sometimes it may seem less exciting, having content that are just high level itineraries or something that feels like a little bit more timeless. These actually are really high value from a search perspective, and are long-term consideration drivers. So we've found that what to do in blank or a weekend trip in blank, those actually have the longest term search the longest term search viability, because people are just straight up looking for that. And we've also seen that this is really great to repurpose for paid consideration, because if it performs well organically, then which we traditionally see more evergreen content perform well organically, it's more effective for audiences who don't even know us yet, because has proven success with people who have seen it. And it's for someone who has never met us before, giving them some more of this like long-term consideration type of content is more effective at getting them in the door and deepening that consideration. And then long form and long term, long form content is something that we are, deepening our exploration of. This candidly is not the easiest thing for a destination to invest in. It's something that we are approaching, we're considering in different ways, but we understand that the more information that we can feed to not only algorithms but also to index and search, that's more context for LLMs to pull and cite you as a resource. So we found a lot of success here with uploading all of the First in Fright podcast episodes and their transcripts to YouTube, because that increases searchability, but it also creates this well of information for algorithms to pull from to, create that justification of relevancy to serve to people already looking for that information. And by extension, we are looking for creators who have a YouTube presence, who are more traditionally in the long form space, because we understand the purpose of having that within the mix and how much more important it's becoming in the coming years. Um, with that investment in owned content also comes long-term and extended partnerships. Rebecca will also talk a little bit more about creators in a little bit, but we have found a lot of value in creating these long-term and extended partnerships with creators, because the more they talk about us, again, the more it's serving the algorithm with trusted information from an established source. I will go ahead and pass it on to Rebecca to talk about indexability and algorithmic media.
All right. I know that the algorithm already feels like Wi-Fi, where you're like, it's in the air, it's mysterious, it's magical. So hopefully that helped break things down. We're going to add another level here. So stick with me. Indexability, you've heard it a couple times. So why does indexability now come up with social media? So indexing is just a way that essentially bots are able to read and store content. This previously, your social content was not available to these bots, but now some platforms have welcomed it in. Obviously, the word of the season, AI is the reason. So they're looking for more diverse sources to continue to add to kind of their neural network. Some platforms still don't. The ones that are currently indexable are TikTok, YouTube, X, Reddit in a limited partnership with Google and LinkedIn. So essentially all of these platforms, what this means is you have your in-platform performance, right? You have your specific metrics, your specific trust factors, and then you have the long-term value now within these platforms, because like a win is a win is a win. So a citation from LinkedIn is the same as a citation from your website now. It is all fair game. So what does this mean? Well, in addition to kind of evaluating your in-platform priorities and performance, we now want to be layering in those tactics to your content that's going to be able to give you that sort of that 1 + 1 = 3, that magical boost in the long-term value of your content and your just your content. Than just within the platform alone. So how can you prepare? We're going to give you some tips here in just a second, but really you want to make sure, first of all, that you want to strategize around diversifying your presence. Obviously, we're not recommending anyone get spread too thin, but really looking at how you might want to flex your community management roles within your team to be able to exist in spaces that make sense for you and the content that you're already creating. Again, if you're not already making some long form content, we're not recommending, hey, turn your whole team into a long form content creation. No, find efficiencies and sort of what makes sense for you right now, and then just put the correct community management in place. I also want to reinforce, you've probably heard this a lot, but partners, for those of you who have Google business profiles or have specific locations, or are posting specific destinations, making sure that those geotags and location tags are used consistently. That essentially is structured data within the platform that it will increase the indexability, the relevance, the visibility of it on the other side of the world, the indexable side of the world. So next slide. So here's an example. I'm going to circle back to First in Fright as a quick example as to how we kind of build this balance of priorities. So when we look at First in Fright as a campaign, we want to have anchor content that we know that we have control over, that, as the state, we want to be pushing as many qualified leads to partners as possible. We want those wins for you. So we're going to create a series of base content. Okay, but how are we going to connect people to that content, get them familiar with the concepts, drive the need? All right, well, we're going to look at where these communities are. So we knew Spotify, haunted, spooky, all of that lives there. Okay, great. If we already have the assets for Spotify, then let's go ahead and cross-post those episodes on YouTube, because YouTube is indexable. So when we upload the transcripts, it's basically it's like a free win potentially on indexability and search value. Additionally, now when we first did First in Fright, it was not indexable. But now any of those assets that are there, we are being pulled in. So our First in Fright series, anything that is sort of existing in perpetuity, so a reel or a post, now also gives the added value of reinforcing First and Fright as a uniquely North Carolina positioning and connecting people with specific destinations in state. And it being a niche community, it sort of naturally has built-in efficiencies. So we're owning a niche category, and then we're creating really clear pathways towards booking and trip planning. And so that's sort of how we balance indexability and algorithmic media in mind. Specifically with First and Fright, we also worked with creators because we wanted to leverage that leveraging of trust and also connecting more directly with those followers. So both from an influence and a creator standpoint. So this is like an example of how we've built with the balance in mind. Then it comes down to where to watch, how to watch. I know everyone wants that like magical GEO silver bullet. We're not going to have that conversation on this call today. Feel free to connect with us separately if you are interested in measurement tools. I will reinforce we do not have a silver bullet. However, what's exciting is that we are seeing now the rollout within some of the more stable models. So like Google Gemini, Google AI summaries. Google is in beta testing for the generative AI performance evaluation in Google Search Console. So you may be a part of that beta testing. Please go into your Google Search Console if it is set up and check under performance, under search results. And if you've got the little caret, expand it and explore generative AI. It's cool that we're able to see it. It's still really limited to impressions, which I appreciate that Google is taking a really measured approach in regards to what they actually are able to track within these neural networks. You also, within Search Console, are able to add those indexable platforms now. So you can add new properties. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and X are available. But really, the goal here is going to be to come together as a team and be able to set up what community management looks like, what benchmarks for you might look like. So looking at historical data, sort of saying, okay, we want to maintain or improve this. And then also taking the indexability opportunities into account when we're talking about the algorithmic channels. So as an example, okay, do we want to do a stories Q&A style because the Q&A sticker helps drive engagement, which then helps potentially drive reach? Or do we want to do a static post with Q&A and comments for indexability because it matches the structured Q&A format that we know would potentially increase citation in response to a query through like traditional Google search, through an LLM, whatever. Now the answer can be we do both staggered, but if you only have the resources to do one, determine internally, okay, what do we think is going to make the difference to our team based off of the topic, the content, etc. Lots of fun discussions to be had. So rethinking creators, and I'm gonna go a little bit quickly through this because I know that we're running close on time. So an integrated content creator, it's mostly just someone who has the ability and the skill set to create across channels and to be able to support a singular narrative rather than disconnected pieces of content. So I have some examples for you here. So creator integration matters because it is taking that indexable first strategy. It's leveraging both the algorithm and the indexability. So here's some quick tips. Make sure to develop a full itinerary or POI on your web page, having an anchor to drive people to. Again, knowing that those link clicks are like, a pretty high impact metric. Turn it into an Instagram carousel, clip it into a TikTok or reel, create and upload it as longer form video on YouTube. So if you're looking to like plus up a concept and you're especially looking for reach, like new leads that is beyond just sort of your email list, right? Okay, we need to do these reach tactics. And how can we do a yes and approach? Like, yes, create the Instagram carousel and do a Pinterest pin, something like that. It's when you're able to work with creators who can work in this integrated way, you're getting extremely high value because it's also authored content. So integration at work, this is a really, I'll mostly let you review this in your own time, but we have demonstrated as the state why this creator partnership this creator integrated partnership is so valuable. So we recently worked with Michael Mattei on an integrated creator trip. We did sort of co-author the itinerary together, but then we saw how impressive it was across the channels. And the most significant thing here is, while yes, it had the reach and the interest level and the positive indicators across social, the traffic that was driven to site, number one, organically, meaning people who didn't come in through Instagram, not through referral, but came in because of the topic. We saw a 79% engagement rate on this, which is almost near 30% above what a benchmark of success would be, which is great. So don't know where to start. I'm just going to touch on these, and then I apologize if those of you have a hard stop at 11, but I believe Maggie and I can stay for if there are any burning questions. If you don't know where to start, I'll just say we have 2 programs live and that still have slots for this fiscal year. Hype Auditor mostly is going to be helping to vet creators for you outside of just sort of tone, aesthetics, personality, really getting into that data-rich behavior to make sure that the investment that you're making makes sense. And then the other thing that I'll reiterate here is we did launch oh no, you can go to the next one, Maggie, I'm sorry. We did launch we're doing a pilot program, an integrated content creator program. We still have slots open. This year we're working with Christina Riley and C Tripping. And so it basically is almost a bundle of content that we've priced as in the most cost-effective way as possible. And it embodies this sort of algorithmic and indexable approach. You can see all of what's included in the digital partner brochure within the industry site. But if you're interested in either one of these programs, please reach out to our partner team. We'd love to see this approach because it really is a win for everyone involved. So if you've got any questions, let us know. And speaking of questions, again, sorry for running a little bit long, but we're here. I'll look and see if we have any in the chat. If you want to drop questions in the chat, we can look for it. Oh, but Guy, I think you might have one.
I'm hanging around.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, I guess so first and foremost, I'm gonna give a chance as others may want to add in, but this is great information. Thank you so much. More great information is available next month for our partner webinar, as we will take a research deep dive, and some of that will delve a little bit into the county numbers that are about to be announced. So again, if you want to mark your calendars here, second Thursday of the month in September, we will be doing a research deep dive. A question came in from the Visit NC part about the in-state media mission, excuse me, about hotel blocks or recommendations. I do not have that information available. We'll certainly pull it if the individual that submitted that question. It was if you want to, probably the best way is also media, that email media@visitnc.com. That would they'd be able to help on that part. All right, other questions. Maggie, you mentioned Reddit, and there might have been some groaning by some on, oh no, not another social media platform, but Reddit has been around for a while. But can you give maybe a really high overhead view on what Reddit is and why you suggested it being a great trove of information for our destination marketers?
Yes, I'm a little obsessed with Reddit as someone who dives into social listening constantly. But Reddit is essentially it's what's known as, or they call themselves, the front page of the internet, in that it's a collection of what they call subreddits, but they're just smaller communities within this broader platform around specific opportunities. It's very similar to traditional message boards in a lot of ways, where people can post a piece of news or a picture of something. Like the Charlotte subreddit. I see local news come through there all the time. And then people can comment and add their opinions. But the key thing about Reddit is that it's largely anonymous. So people don't have accounts with their first name and last name on it all the time, rarely actually. So it's a fairly anonymous place to talk about news within specific communities. And I find it's a really great place to dive into traveler insights as well as just, insights about specific events because people are so honest on there because of that anonymity. So it's a place where, it's a great place to research and understand how people are talking about you without that added bias of having your name attached to it.
I'll add that Reddit, even if you don't have a community management plan, you don't want to actively participate, there is value in creating a Reddit Pro account, which is free, by the way, because you can begin to track the keywords and how they exist. So even if you just want to look at sort of frequency and sentiment around your destination or around your competitive set, because what's cool is there are communities about budget travel. So if you're like, what should we really focus on this quarter for budget travel? The immediacy of the keyword relevance is so important. So even if you just need a freebie, a Reddit Pro account, totally free to you, and you don't have to like comment or anything. You can just kind of geek out in the background, which I love to do. So
I also want to throw a quick throwback, maybe. I don't know. But driving you to our YouTube page, one, this is recorded. This will be here. There's some great information. And I know we threw a lot at you very quickly. So, please go back, watch this video. We will have it up for you next week. But they also reference Google business listings. And we've had a previous webinar discussion on that and some tips from some folks that have recently updated their listings and ways to make those more possibly beneficial for you. So when you go back to find this video to see all the great stuff Maggie and Rebecca have mentioned, you may want to also take a look down at some of the other videos in the webinar playlist and see that one about the Google business listings. Because I do, Maggie, you were right. They are great assets, and there were some tips there. Or sorry, Rebecca, if you were the one that threw in the Google business, that there's some more in depth there with that. All right, our folks are kind of being quiet. I
Guy, I think your audio might have dropped out. Maybe it's just for me.
No, I'm hearing it as well.
Okay. I'm sure what Guy is saying is you are welcome to ask us questions, or if you think of some in the coming days, Guy has dropped both of our emails. If either of the partner programs appeal to you, you're welcome to reach out to our partner team. We'd love to speak to you about it and figure out what makes sense for your destination. Sorry, Guy, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I saw that you were like really impassionedly saying things, and I was like, "This is I."
Please hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions that we can help you with. Until next summer, we look forward to seeing you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.